Hey guys, you're welcome back to my channel. This is the sewing video of the Victorian corset draft that we already have on the channel. So I'll leave the link in the description box. These are the pieces we got from the front draft. We have the middle front. The side front is divided into three parts. So I've added about 3/4 inch all the way round. Now that's because I want to use this as my boning channel as well. Okay, so most times I go for the invisible boning, especially if I have some kind of embellishment or decoration that I want to make on the main fabric. But for this very style, the boning channels are on the main fabric. So that's what I'll be using. That's why I added up to a 1/4 inch, a 3/4 inch. So those are the yokes for the corset, the back yoke and the front yoke, and I've added interface to it. And this is the back panel as well. We have the middle back and the side back. Now I cut all of these on the fabric and the lining, and I added interface to both the fabric and the lining. To start sewing, I'll set aside the draft pieces. Now I like to work with the draft at this point, especially when you have so many pieces involved, so that you'll not be confused or mixed up things, because it will affect the general look. You need to work with your draft pieces and give everything you need to, like notches, arrows, so you know which part is going for which part. So now I'll bring in the second piece of the front panel, and the right side facing the right side, I'll pin it to the middle front. And I will do the same thing to the third piece and the fourth piece. Exactly what I do to the main fabric is what I'll be doing to the lining. Okay, so pinning it this way makes it easier for me, so that when I get to the sewing machine, I'll simply be taking out the allowance that I added. So now whenever you add an allowance to a garment, you need to take out exactly that garment, so that it will not alter the measurement that you're working with. Okay, so to avoid amendments and all of that. So we are striving for perfection, and so of course you measure it at some point to be sure. Okay, because so many things can happen to a fabric. A fabric can shrink and a fabric can expand, especially when heat is involved. But I'll advise that when you're working with a corset or any garment, you will need to add the interface to the fabric first before you use your pattern pieces to cut the fabric. That way you will know you're cutting exactly the measurement that you're working with. Because if you cut the pieces first, the fabric first, and then you add interface, it can shrink and it can expand. And this way it will affect the measurement you're working with. So to be on the safe side, I would advise that you add your interface first to the whole fabric. You might think it's a waste, but it will, avoid a lot of hacks for you, so that you will not have to do one thing a second time. Okay, so to be on the safe side, add your interface to your fabric first. That way it makes it easier for everyone, your client and yourself. So now I've added all the pieces together, and I'll do the same to the lining. I'll take it to the machine and then I will sew out. Remember, I am sewing out 3/4 inch for each of the pieces, of this front panel. These are the back panel, and I've added the allowance that I need for it. I'm using 3/4 inch as well for my seam allowance. So if you notice on the draft pieces, I made some arrows that will help me to know which direction is going for which direction. So I'll simply join this together and I will add it to the front panel, and this is what we have. So you'll notice that there's a difference on the back panel, okay, of 2 inches, about 2 inches. Remember, on the draft, when I was drafting the front, I went up with 2 inches on the side front, and I forgot to take that out from the back panel, so I'll simply measure that out 2 inches, and then I'll cut it through. You know you need to top stitch that part that we've sewn. You need to top stitch it so it will not lose. And then after that, I will simply push the seam allowance to one side, and then top stitch it on the main fabric. Remember I said I'm using it for my boning channels. So I like to work with invisible boning most of the time, except for some styles like this, because the invisible boning will give me a plain surface, especially if I want to do some embellishment or any kind of decoration on the main fabric. So I have a plain surface to work with, but still we have the structure that the structure required for the corset. So now I will top stitch it on the main fabric. This is a Mikado fabric. It's kind of tough, so you need to be careful and you need to take your time. So you push the seam allowance to one part, and then you top stitch, and that becomes our boning channels. After top stitching it, I'll give you a good press, and then I will insert my boning. So now if you do not know what it is to make an invisible boning, I'll leave the link of that video in the description box so you can watch that and you know what it is, what it means to do invisible boning. These are the yokes, the front yoke and the back yoke. So I've added the seam allowance I'll be needing for the sewing, okay, and I cut all of them in twos. That is, I make the front yoke to be double. I cut the nude net double. So I'll simply use one to turn the other. The same thing I did to the back yoke, and the back yoke is in two, right? You know, the right and the left side, because there's a joining in the middle, all right, for easy wearing. So I added 1/2 inch around the neck, and that's what I'll be sewing out. I added 1/2 inch around where we will have the zipper. It's not a zipper, we'll be using hooks later. So I'll sew that part as well, and the keyhole area. So those are the parts I added seam allowance, and I'll be taking that out in my sewing. So when I'm done, this is what we have. Okay, I've top stitched and I gave it a grace. So when I'm done top stitching and giving it a good press, I will need to insert my boning. So I'll be using this plastic boning, and I will need to bond the edges so it will not hurt the client. Okay, so you can use your masking tape to, you know, just wrap that part, or like this one I'm using a lighter to just bond the edge, okay, to make it blunt, and then I will insert it through the channels that I've created. I'll simply push it all the way to the top part, okay. So I'll make the boning 1 inch shorter than the boning channel. Now I'll use 1/2 inch at the top for, you know, for the turning with the lining, and I will use 1/2 inch at the hem there to turn it as well with lining. So of course, because this is a plastic boning and it's not sewable, so you need to leave that 1/2 inch. So that's why I said the boning will have to be 1 inch shorter than the boning channel that we have. Okay, so I'll simply push it inward, and I'll have that 1/2 inch around the hem there. Okay, so I'll be doing that to all the bonings and the channels. And when I'm done with that, I will give it a good press as well. And we'll move on to the yoke. Okay, so now I've turned the neckline of the yoke and I've joined it at the shoulder. So this is what we have. Okay, so now for the armhole, because it's not gonna have a sleeve, I'll trim out the seam allowance just a little, like a quarter inch off. Okay, I'll trim it out just so it will not be visible. Okay, because I'm turning this part as well. We are not using sleeves, so I'll be turning this part. So because I want to just turn it, okay, I will go, I'll make it at the shoulder. I'll fold half inch inwards, and that will be my meeting point. Okay, I'll turn it inside out, pin it, and that way I'll be sure of what I'm